Good morning, and good morning, Senator.
Good morning,
we have
Morgan.
a lot. Yes, we have a lot to discuss today. There's a lot in the news. What broke yesterday was Tulsi Gabbard, the DNI, released some files on the biolabs within 30 countries. There's over 100 biolabs scattered across the globe, with 40 of them happening to be in Ukraine. So we're going to have a discussion on that, but there's also a lot to talk about with the Iran peace deals and negotiations happening there. And I think we wanted to discuss some of the new bills and in the National Defense Authorization Act that is subject to interlink the Israeli military with the U.S. military on the intelligence front. So with that, I want to kick it off to you, Senator, and good morning.
Okay, good morning. Things are breaking so quickly right now that it's hard to keep up with them. I did an AI search late last night, and it said definitely this is happening, and then I phrased it differently, and it said definitely this is not happening. It's not that yet, and things are shifting so rapidly in the White House and over in Tehran that you can get all of the facts, but the facts are in dispute, and they're, one side says this definitively and so forth. Anyway, it appears that the U.S. and Iran are very close to an initial peace deal. And the way it sort of unfolds in phases, and the first part is an MOU that requires certain things to be done. It opens the Straits of Hormuz in some respect, and it sort of lays out a framework where there'll be negotiations on other things like the nuclear issue. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of a phased thing, and as President Trump says, I think accurately, it sort of requires some proof that the other side is complying. And I would say the same thing applies with Iran, because just this morning, even though the foreign minister of Pakistan has said that the deal is essentially done, and now it's just a matter of signing it. And yet, even this morning, Iran has fired some or sent some drones to threaten shipping in the Straits of Hormuz. So there's been a little action there. I think it's just Iran reminding the shipping to, don't start moving until we say you can start moving. So, but I think nonetheless things seem to be moving. Now, Tehran has demanded that as a part of the initial part of this, that Israel withdraw its military from Lebanon. Now, there are two objectives that Israel had in initiating this war. Remember, Iran did not start the war. Israel started it. It wasn't the United States that started it. We just, Trump felt like, okay, I got to go along with Israel. And so we jumped into this disastrous mess. But anyway, there were two prime objectives that Netanyahu had. Number one was to get American boots on the ground in Iran, where we would be fighting and occupying for the next 60 years. That has failed. The president has looked at the pros and cons, and there are times he's been exasperated. Well, we ought to do this, we ought to do that. And then looking at the downsides and the fragile level of support the public has had for this war, it's apparent that any significant loss of life would potentially even bring down the government. If we were to have one of our destroyers sunk, like, we had talked about how we were going to usher ships through the Straits of Hormuz and protect them, and then it became evident, well, you do that, we could end up having a destroyer sunk and all of a sudden the American public who hates the public hates the war in the first place, all of a sudden says, okay, look at it, all these guys have died for this useless, stupid war that Israel's fighting. So we backed off from that. We abandoned it after a single day. It was announced we're going to do it. Next day it was announced we're not going to do it. Same thing went with Karg Island. We sent in Marines, we sent in paratroopers to prepare to take the island. And then we realized, okay, yeah, you can take the island. It's a small, I think it's like a 5-mile island. It's not too big.
Very small, yeah.
And it's a little bit hard to defend. The problem is, once you get there, you've got Iranian drones swarming around. They can kill any American soldiers who land there, and then they'll do it, and it'll be photographed, and you're going to have that bouncing around in the online media, and Americans again are going to go crazy. So anyway, so Netanyahu failed in his foremost objective, which was to get the U.S. involved in a ground war, just as he got us involved in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Syria, in Libya, in Somalia, in Yemen. We probably had half of our entire national debt incurred because of Netanyahu and all of his bloodlust for attacking everybody. But in any event, so he failed with that objective. So the second objective, which was very important to Israel, starting in 1948, has launched at least 4 very major wars against its neighbor, Lebanon. Lebanon didn't start any of these wars. Israel started every single one. And this time, Netanyahu was determined, this time I'm going to carve out a big portion of Israel. We're going to take it over. And there have been announcements that we will Gaza Lebanon. Yeah. In other words, we will destroy all of those things that support human life. And we will just erase the civilization in something far, far more extensive than what the Holocaust was in Germany. Just basically exterminate the human life there and all record that it even existed. And they've set about doing this, and they were surprised that Hezbollah, which has always been a defensive organization defending Lebanon from these Israeli attacks, they rose up and they started using a certain type of drone that's wire controlled, and they've destroyed a number of Israeli tanks, and they've got them kind of bogged down a little bit in Lebanon. Now, it looks like Iran is going to demand that Israel completely withdraw from Lebanese territory. And I'm sure that President Trump wants that. He wants this war over. He knows we're in big trouble. But already Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, said in a social media post, no matter what comes of President Trump's effort to make a deal with Iran, Israel must retain the ability to act independently to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. Now, this nuclear weapon thing is the big red herring in the whole thing. It's always thrown up. So it's not clear what Israel is going to do, but they could try to scotch the deal. They've done it before, but I think Trump is to the point where, I don't know, Netanyahu may be a little afraid of what Trump may do if he doesn't go along.
Yeah, I would hope that there is pushback within the American government on Israel's actions. I think it's very interesting to note kind of the progression of where we started to where we are now. I remember in the first Islamabad talks, you had J.D. Vance come out and say that the fact that negotiations, the ceasefire deal that they were negotiating at the time, saying that Iran believing that it would include Lebanon was like kind of a non-starter, that they didn't really understand what was going on. So now we're in this position where, yes, Lebanon is included in this, and we're going to, at the very best to our ability, which I think we have a lot more ability than the American government lets on, to hold Israel accountable to their actions. We notice what Israel's doing in Lebanon is the same thing in Gaza. They're even taking, the psychological warfare aspect of it, where they drop leaflets in these communities. And some of them have basically, like you said, equated what if they stay, you will be considered a combatant, and we're going to do to you basically what we did to Gaza. So they boast about these actions, these genocidal actions that they're extending beyond their borders and into Lebanon. And you have the American government who is footing the bill. And I know you wanted to discuss about something else that you find alarming, of how tied we are to the Israeli government. I know we'll get into that in a little bit. But with so I also read that you had the president of Iran. Let me see if I can pull it up. He actually, I think you make an important note that these negotiations aren't a definitive stop to the nuclear question, which I think it leaves room for future engagements, or for Israel to spoil this action by basically saying, oh, they're getting ready to detonate the bomb, and we had to stop them really quick. I'm trying to pull up this real quick. I don't have enough. You have the foreign minister, basically said that the Islamabad memorandum will not be signed tomorrow. This is fairly recent. This was posted about 45 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And the nuclear issues are not on stage. The focus is only on ending the war. And it's based on kind of what you said, that the other side, basically, i.e. the United States and Israel, have displayed inconsistency. What I do find interesting, though, is that you do have Iran coming out and stating that they will have a funeral for the Ayatollah in July.
Yeah,
and they are withholding from that because I believe the funeral of General Soleimani was attacked by Israel. You had civilians were bombed at that funeral. So I suspected that Iran was withholding from funeral plans because they felt like there was going to be a terror attack done that day. So I find it interesting that they've actually submitted dates, which would be in a few weeks. It's the beginning of July.
Yes. Israel would definitely bomb the funeral if they could. So my guess is that that's sort of evidence that this peace agreement is very close, and that Iran sees it as being very close. Mm-hmm. Because now they feel like, okay, we can go ahead and have a very dignified service, funeral service for him. Now, let me just get into our main topic, which is whether Congress can block Trump's peace deal now that it looks like it's getting very, very close and could be signed within another couple of days. So this constant rolling out of information about the peace deal being imminent, that it looks like Pakistan thinks that the MOU is very nearly completed and can be signed remotely and digitally within days. But now we have the question, in order to implement this peace deal, there are a couple of things that will have to be done. And one is that there will have to be a lifting of sanctions on Iran. And some of this will be gradual. It won't just happen in an instant, but lifting of sanctions, and also unfreezing Iranian assets. there's been great confusion among the public about what President Obama did with the JCPOA, with the agreement that he finalized with Iran, that Trump criticized so roundly. Now, believe me, if there was anybody who was not a supporter of Obama's, it was me. But I did support him on the JCPOA. I thought it was a good agreement. It's so thoroughly discredited now that most people don't dare to say anything positive about it. However, it was a good agreement. Now, when it came under attack, they said, "Well, look, the U.S. had sent these plane loads of cash to Tehran." And it sounded like it was some sort of a U.S. payoff of Iran for the agreement. But that was not the case at all. What happened is the United States, through its global power, froze Iranian government assets in a great number of different places. Some of it was in banks, but there were banks scattered all around. It wasn't just in London and New York. And in any event, so there's a great deal of money. It could be as much as $100 billion. The money belongs to Iran. And I don't think that anyone would really contest that if they were really pinned down to, instead of using just sort of, just loose talk, if they were required to technically say who owns that money. It's owned by Iran, but it's just held by U.S. power, suppressing it from moving from banks. So the money that was released under Obama's administration was Iranian money going to Iran where it belonged. And I think there will be some of this occur, but it's going to happen as certain things are done that implement the agreement. So the question really is, okay, if these are two things, we have to unfreeze the assets and we have to drop some of the sanctions so that we can bring Iran more fully into the global nations that are respected and their sovereignty respected. So the question then is, who has the power to do this? Is it president? Can he drop the sanctions and unfreeze, or is that something that Congress has to do? And now, keep in mind, it would be one thing if Congress would say, okay, the American people want this war over. We got a peace deal. We bless the thing. But you have these Republican and Democrat war hawks who are willing to push hard to undermine the deal. And they are willing, if necessary, to sacrifice the lives of American soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, to advance Israeli war goals. Mm-hmm. If Israel makes a big push and demands that they get in line, it's not clear what would happen. So it's important to see how much leverage does the president have. Does he have the ability to act unilaterally? And as I have looked into it, it looks like the president does have enough authority to where he can reduce the sanctions and unfreeze the funds as he sees fit. Now, the Israeli first politicians, and the Lindsey Grahams on the one hand in the Republican Party, the Senator Mark Warners on the Democrat Party, yeah. They are totally in the bag for Israel. it's Israel first, America second in their
Mhm.
minds. And so thankfully, the president does seem to have the upper hand. Congress can delay the implementation of the lifting of sanctions and unfreezing for they can delay it for 82 days. They can make it very politically awkward because they can call officials before Congress and force them to say things that are going to make it undermine the peace agreement and to make it look less positive than it is. But in any event, I think he's got the power, and I think at this point, I think he recognizes that the position of the Republican Party has been so deeply undermined in the midterm elections that, and it's because of the war and the inflation induced by the war. And I think he's recognized that this is the last chance to pull things out with the midterms, because recently it's begun to look as though the Senate is up for grabs. It's not clear that the Republicans will win the Senate.
Mhm.
And if the Democrats win the Senate and the House, they'll do away with the filibuster rules in the Senate. They will proceed then to pack the U.S. Supreme Court, and then they will be able to overturn anything they want at the Supreme Court, including, we had a very dramatic decision that provided immunity to the president for official acts, but they could put in place a packed Supreme Court that would say, well, that applies to everything except violations of international laws of war, and we're going to say that President Trump has violated laws of war or some international thing, and prosecute the president, throw him in jail, impeach him. So Republicans had better get their act together, because they're just ignoring reality at this point. They must hold some levers of government, because if they lose all three levers of government, then we are very likely to change our form of government. There's a dramatic sweep of really hardcore, dedicated socialists being elected, and with all of the campaign stuff thrown at them, people are saying, we don't care, we're just going to vote,
Yeah.
and we're going to change the government.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you have a serious fatigue of the lack of how the Republic has what's its intentions and how it was supposed to be run and how it is being run to this day. All the populist positions that majority of Americans want reform on are routinely neglected. And I think that has it's a real palpable in the communities, and that is kind of what you're seeing, is that they're desperate for change, anything, because what they've been getting so far is, we've had this kind of this uniparty where you said that I believe you have multiple interests at play, but the predominant one is really the AIPAC, Israel. What is going to benefit a foreign nation, like often precedes what the American interests are. And I think you have a very strong appetite from the American public that they're tired of that. So you do see in those times people will, vote in whomever, whatever, to try and shake up and get something new, something, some kind of give towards what we've kind of seen. What I've grown up in is just this it's like almost like a running joke. Well, the politicians, they always lie. They don't do anything for you. And that's not how it's supposed to work. And I think that my generation is very sick of that, and they want to try and do something about it. We saw with the Massey election, you had my generation coming out and voting for him. I think it was 60% over than the Gal Rain character who ultimately won. So you have this population, the younger generation, that they're tuned in. They don't want this, the old guard that kind of continues the status quo, and they're wanting something new. They get their information from podcasts and influencers, if you want to say, not the traditional media sources that we'll go into later in the show, that really try to orchestrate and manipulate the people into getting what they want. So I know that we wanted to discuss something also very interesting, and it goes in hand with how the Congress is a uniparty towards Israelis' interest, which is this bill that they've been trying to push, or this section in the National Defense Authorization Act, that will tie the Israeli military with the U.S. military. Do you want to go ahead and switch to that topic?
Yes, I do. But let me just touch on Tommy Massey. Massey was defeated largely with Israeli money, or pro-Israeli money. The most costly congressional campaign in U.S. history, where the Zionists were determined they could not have him in there, because he did a couple of things. He came out against the Iran war, but he disclosed the fact that every member of Congress has an Israeli handler, many of them actually working within the congressional offices, where they review everything that deals with Israel, everything that concerns Israel. And that he described for Tucker Carlson that the many members of Congress would tell him, he said, look, I've got to negotiate with my AIPAC guy, my Israeli representative, to see what I can do, because these guys are the ones who hold the control. Where did the control come from? Well, another thing that Tommy Massey did is he sided with the Democrats on opening up the Epstein files. Now, why? It is widely understood, widely believed within conservative foreign policy circles that Epstein was set up by the Israeli government, by Mossad, their intelligence agency. The whole Fantasy Island sex scheme was a massive blackmail scheme, maybe the biggest blackmail scheme in history. And the idea was that Epstein was vastly funded, and he purchased an island, and then he staffed it by recruiting underage girls, women, whatever. Then he invited the rich and powerful from all over, all nations of the globe, media stars, people, newscasters, bankers, billionaires, and he would get them to have sexual relations with these underage girls. It's a criminal act, a felony. And the Fantasy Island was rigged with cameras so that every intimate sex act was recorded. And those records, which, somehow they all disappeared, but everybody knows they exist. And where did they go? They went to Mossad. They went to Israel. They're under lock and key. And so you have guys, some of them are married. Many of them are they're all in a position where disclosure will destroy them. And you had the prince over in Great Britain who was he was revealed to have had sex with an underage girl. And the next thing, he's stripped of his title. He's disgraced. Nobody will speak to him. He loses his pension and everything. And I'm guessing that they chose one person to be an exemplar so that they could say, okay, if any of you mouth off, and if any of you refuse to do what you're ordered to do, then you see what happened with the royal family, and that's going to be you. And so this is how they, through this blackmail and also bribery and also just traditional campaign contribution, an enormous portion of campaign contributions come from Israel First, Zionist billionaires. So this has led us to the point where you were about to mention with the 2027 National Defense Authorization Act. And what has happened, you would think with the public being so soured on the Iran war, and with the reputation of Israel going into the toilet because of all of their the Holocaust in Gaza, and the Holocaust they're trying to unleash on Lebanon. So you would think that the last thing in the world that they would do is have some big new legislative initiative. But you would be wrong, because you would be ignoring the mechanisms, the blackmail, the bribery that goes on. And so in the National Defense Authorization Act, there is a very, very anti-American provision. It's numbered 224. It's the United States-Israel Defense Technology Cooperation Initiative. And it lays out a provision that would just basically weave the United States and Israel together in all military matters. We would be involved in bilateral research and development, which means all of our military secrets, boom. If we have a secret weapon, it belongs to Israel immediately. Co-production of weapons, joint ventures, licensing agreements, every manner of U.S.-Israeli military-industrial complex cooperation. Now, and this is important. The thing that is really giving the United States an enormous edge in the world is our cutting-edge technology in AI, in space technology, and so forth. This provision, 224, shifts all of that and opens it up to this tiny little country. Israel has a population of 9 million people, only 9 million people. And yet we would be giving them access to every area of defense technology, including artificial intelligence, quantum, autonomous systems, directed energy, cyber research, biotech, and many more, everything. And the U.S. military data would be Israel's military data. There'd actually be an executive agent established who would be responsible for synchronizing cooperative efforts between the U.S. and Israel to expand and accelerate bilateral defense technology research. And so we would essentially be integrating the Israeli and American military forces, not that the President of the United States would control theirs, but that they would have much greater control over ours.
Yeah.
And this is already passed in the House because they've got the Israeli handlers. Members of the House, they do what they're told. Now it goes to the Senate, and the Senate, we'll see what these guys will do. Now, on top of that, Congress has now introduced Section 622 of the draft Intelligence Authorization Bill. Intelligence. Now, as you know, there is a large part of the U.S. government that is totally out of control of the president and the Congress and the Supreme Court. It's basically autonomous, and it exists within all these black intelligence agencies, the CIA, the whole network, and because it is unaccountable to the public in any respect. You and I can't vote against it. We can't vote for it. If we elect a president, he can't do anything about it. And so Congress is now taking action to mandate intelligence sharing with Israel. And what it would do is expand and enhance intelligence sharing with the government of Israel. And it would prohibit the suspension or limitation of such sharing, except on the basis of specific identifiable national security concern determined by the president. So the only way that the president could interfere with Israeli control over our intelligence would be for him to identify a specific national security concern and to report it to Congress within 15 days, detailing the reason for the change and the categories of information involved. And it would involve a big blow up with Congress. Essentially, it would be something that the president could never accomplish. No president, Democrat or Republican. It would take American sovereignty away, and it would grant it to Israel, which is in the process of carrying out horrific war crimes.
Yeah.
And it would make us subordinate. It would make the American people subordinate to the Israeli government, to their Mossad intelligence agency. And it's been pointed out, and the Schiller Institute that does very, very excellent work with their intelligence system. They said that it moves the integration of the Israeli military into the United States by eliminating public visibility and accountability, because everything becomes so highly classified that, even, congressmen, members of the Senate, members of the House, they can't effectively pry into these top secret things. The president has limited ability to do it. So it would move so much of American intelligence and also the creation of weaponry and so forth. Mm-hmm. It would take the power away from elected officials of any sort and grant it to the Israelis. And I think I can't think of anything more anti-American, more direct a threat to the U.S. Constitution than these two measures.
Well, I think it's ironic that it comes out of the time where, I'm not sure if you had seen these, it's kind of going around. The New York Times posted it. about the Pentagon has basically put Israel and its intelligence apparatus as a high risk as they were spying on some of our top officials with the negotiations in Iran. So you have members in the Pentagon recognizing the risk that Israel holds to our state interests, and that they far exceed any kind of espionage or intelligence gathering that our other allies go. They go the extra mile. There was a gift that was gifted to President, I believe, in the beginning of last year, where they said that they caught listening devices in them. I believe that there was listening devices found by the Israeli government in Biden's motorcade, and they had to return the vehicles and discard of that evidence. So you have this continual distrust that Israel likes to display with us, so much so that the Pentagon is basically labeling them as high risk. And there was this case in the early 2000s that made it to Fox News, actually. They did a long segment on it, where all throughout the Eastern Coast, you had these kiosks in malls. And they were selling children's toys, helicopters, planes, trains, but they were bugged with Israeli intelligence or listening devices. And that was so, you have Langley in the Eastern Coast, you have all of these probably top officials within the Eastern Coast that will blindly buy their kid a gift, and therefore, then their house is bugged and they don't even know it. And that was a huge story back in the early 2000s. So you have this pattern that Israel has continually displayed with the U.S. in taking drastic measures to gather intelligence on us. One of the ones that you stated, which was Jeffrey Epstein, the whole case with that, where, he knowingly was closely allied with Ghislaine Maxwell. Her father was a knowing Mossad agent that died in mysterious ways. So you have that entering into the situation, which I find it just insane that this comes at the exact time where you have Congress pushing these measures, where we're saying, no, we want to be further intertwined. We had spoken about this prior in the show. I believe it's the 2024 FISA bill under the Biden administration interlinked the NSA with Unit 8200, which is Israel's intelligence gathering sector. And they intertwined it so that Unit 8200 could work with the NSA in gathering files on American citizens. So there's some drawer or some flash drive somewhere in Israel that has files on American citizens that they deem to be threats to their national security, I presume, for their exercising their First Amendment right and saying that they don't trust Israel. So I find that very interesting as well. It kind of shows that there is this snowball effect that almost it's not stoppable regardless of who you vote for, that there's just this more intertwining, this more of this nodding between U.S. and Israel.
Yes. And, you mentioned with Epstein, they very, very curious because, everybody knows it was a Mossad operation. I mean, people who deeply look into this, who don't have a financial interest one way or the other, and they can be objective, and everybody knows what it is. Now, Alan Dershowitz was Epstein's first attorney when he was indicted on a 60-count indictment in Florida, federal indictment. There was an indictment. He wasn't indicted, but there was an indictment, 53-page. They could have put him in prison for life. Alan Dershowitz was his defense counsel. Alan Dershowitz somehow negotiated a very bizarre agreement. It was a sort of a non-prosecute agreement.
A sweetheart deal is what they labeled it.
It was an ultimate where it sort of guaranteed they would not proceed with the federal prosecution. And in exchange, they would let the state of Florida prosecuted Epstein on a 2-count indictment, 2 sort of multiplicious things. One was soliciting underage prostitution. Something was conspiracy to do it. And he ends up getting a 13-year jail or 13-month jail sentence, so just over a year. And most of that, he's out on work release, where he can do whatever he wants to do. Now, Alan Dershowitz, it was said that he had told the U.S. attorney that Epstein was working for Mossad and the CIA, or both. Now, Dershowitz adamantly denies ever saying that. Now, Dershowitz is known to have represented other Mossad agents, so maybe there's not proof that Epstein was a Mossad agent, but Dershowitz had represented Mossad agents previously. Also, the U.S. attorney, when asked about these conversations, he adamantly denied, no, there had been no discussion about the CIA and Mossad. So, with these things, they're always maneuvered and papered over. So what happens then is Epstein just continues his operations completely unimpeded. Now he feels like he's protected because he's got this agreement with the federal government. But then what happens is the Me Too movement kicks off. And at the same time, there is a reporter, I wish I had her name in front of me, but did a very, very fine series in the Miami Herald newspaper and disclosed the very peculiar goings on with the Epstein case. That forced the Department of Justice to take action, and they set up a case against him, and he was arrested, and he was denied bail. So he was put in jail pending his proceedings. And now what's interesting, I didn't even realize this until I just looked at it, but the case was never presented against Epstein. There was never any evidence presented to a jury. There was never an indictment actually filed against him. So essentially, normally the whole thing would be erased anyway, but it was clear that with the enormous sort of cultural furor over the Me Too movement, that this case was not going to drop, and it was evident that he was going to be convicted, and that in the process he was going to try to bargain his way out. And so a decision was made that he had to commit suicide. That's my interpretation. But he was very afraid that he was going to be murdered, and he expressed that while he was in prison, and then very mysteriously he was on suicide watch, and so they had to have double guards, always somebody there to physically watch him, and somehow the camera cut off and both guards fell asleep, and so when the suicide was committed, nobody saw, and they said, "Whoops! So Epstein, he just killed himself."
Yeah, they had a Jean-Luc Brunel he's from France. He was kind of the French Epstein. Same thing happened to him. He was found dead in his cell, and the relation between the two was that Jean-Luc Jean-Luc Brunel sold Epstein 14 or 13-year-old French girls for his birthday, and it was in the filings that had occurred between Jean-Luc Brunel and Epstein, and it was known that Jean-Luc Brunel was on trial at the same time that Jeffrey Epstein was for the same sex trafficking crimes and allegations. Now, I know that we're cutting it short on the show, but I do want to make a mention of it because it is very important. It's news that broke yesterday of the DNI Tulsi Gabbard. Let me go ahead and put it on the stage, where she did a press release releasing evidence on the U.S. taxpayer-funded Global Biolab program. Now, you hadn't seen this yet when we spoke backstage, so I want to go ahead and play a short video by Tulsi Gabbard herself, kind of going through the findings and what's so important about this.
Sure.
After months of searching through intelligence community holdings and files.
Oh. Is that me? Oh no. Here we go. Sorry, it was a internet, I think, issue.
After months of searching through intelligence community holdings and files.
Let's see. Might not be able to play it because my internet might be acting up, but let's try it one more time. And if not, then we'll just go into what she found, and
Okay.
and then I wanted to have a smaller discussion on some of the media propaganda that was back in 2022, pardon me, that was refuting these claims and maligning people as right-wing extremists for even bringing this up. So let me see if I can play this again.
Give it one more shot.
One more shot. Yes, third time's a charm.
After months of searching through intelligence community holdings and files, today I'm releasing new evidence of long-standing U.S. government funding of more than 120 biolabs in over 30 countries. Now, these biolabs include labs in places like Ukraine, which could be at risk of compromise due to the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. In fact, the intelligence community had previously warned that a U.S.-funded biolab in Ukraine likely housed dangerous pathogens and remained vulnerable to long-standing threats of Russian attack, seizure, or damage. Now, until now, evidence regarding the full existence and funding of these laboratories had been knowingly withheld from you, the American people. Many of these U.S. government-funded biolabs are currently or have previously engaged in research using hazardous and highly contagious pathogens, and in some cases included dangerous gain-of-function research with very little visibility or oversight. Now, President Trump clearly understands the serious threat dangerous gain-of-function research poses to the American people. And this is why he took decisive action over a year ago. On May 25th, 2025, he signed an executive order to end federal funding of gain-of-function research around the world. Here at ODNI, I issued new guidance to the intelligence community directing increased collection on these laboratories and facilities overseas. And
I would play the whole thing, but it is very choppy, and
yeah, but it was helpful anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
Yes. So she went ahead and she released some files on some where these biolabs occurred. I'll put up an image right here. One of them, over 40 were in Ukraine. Now, I find this interesting because in 2022, you had a lot of mainstream media sources refuting these claims, blasting them as unfounded, uncredible, conspiracy theories. You were a Putin puppet for even suggesting this. And now you have actual irrefutable evidence by the CIA basically laying out exactly where these biolabs are. Now, they said that later on in the video of Tulsi Gabbard, the DNI, she will go on and say that they are working to close over the 100 gain of function research labs that take place in over 30 countries all across the globe. 40 of them happen to be in Ukraine, that is in an active war zone right now. And I wanted to see if some of the eastern parts, they're in active war zone, so I find that very alarming.
Mhm.
And Tulsi Gabbard, I believe, as soon as the war broke out, she was also making this claim, basically saying that we need to be very careful. There are pathogens and biolabs in Ukraine, and if they are struck or something happens, it could be catastrophic to the whole of humanity. So I
Well,
want to.
I think also, we need to ask, why is it that the United States is doing germ warfare research in Ukraine on the border of Russia?
Mhm.
Why are we doing germ warfare research in Wuhan, China, where we believe, I think the government, the U.S. government believes there was the initial outbreak of COVID. If we were doing, now we have a germ warfare lab at Fort Detrick, Maryland.
Yeah.
Now, people don't like to call it germ warfare. That's what it is. When you talk about gain of function, you're saying, okay, we'll take some pathogen that is very deadly to people, and we'll make it more easily transmitted. We'll make it harder for people to gain immunity to. We'll make it deadlier than before. That's what gain of function is. We should stop the use of that term, gain of function, and refer to it as germ warfare, because then the public will understand what it is. Why are we putting up germ warfare laboratories on the border of Russia? There's only one reason. We weren't doing it so that we could unleash germ warfare. We weren't going to try to wipe out Ukraine. So who were we trying to wipe out? Well, we were not trying to wipe out Romania or Poland. We were being prepared to use it against Russia. And I think in Wuhan, I think that laboratory in Wuhan, I think they were just guys trying to make a buck, Chinese people. They got a contract. Hey, we'll do this stuff in the lab. We'll do what they say. I don't think they were trying to concoct anything for the Chinese government. I think it was for the U.S. government. It was for, for our people. And they were careless, and it escaped. And then the idea was put out, well, the Chinese did it. The Chinese infected us, and this was their germ warfare. As though, that would be the smart way to do it. You infect your entire population in hopes that it's going to get over to across the water and hurt those people. Now, if that isn't a bizarre thing, but, when government starts pounding out propaganda, they can make people believe anything. I think when we look at these, why are we doing gain of research anywhere outside of the United States? Maybe we shouldn't be doing it in the United States, but we certainly should not be doing it overseas. There is no justification for that. And it's in war zones because that's where we intended to unleash it.
It's highly alarming. And she goes on to even and make the claim or make the clarification that these research facilities operate with very little oversight. Often you have the elected bodies that get into office have no clue about them. You have the bureaucratic bodies that of course, that they're grandfathered in there. They know they get the special clearances and all that to kind of be aware of these sites. But oftentimes the president has no idea. The elected representatives have no idea, but our taxpayer dollars fund them so they can continue these operations. And I wanted to talk about it because I find it very interesting. Is basically the American propaganda machine, and how effective it is at pulling people to each side, being divisive, and just making these broad claims with very little evidence. Now that we have this in our face, that there's all these biolabs, they're marked on a map. You have NBC News at the time basically claiming it to be Russian propaganda, that these non-existent biolabs that were boosted by the U.S. far right. They claimed Tucker Carlson claimed it to be a QAnon conspiracy theory, even though you had people like Tulsi Gabbard who was saying it, at the time. My personal favorite is the ADL. They came out and wrote an article on unmasking the figure behind the Ukrainian biolab conspiracy theory.
This is the Jewish Anti-Defamation League.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I find that to be interesting. They're the ones who, if you're blasted as an anti-Semite, a right-wing conspiracy theorist, can become a persona non grata in a lot of circles. So I find that to be, irresponsible that they also made the claim conspiracy theory unfounded. There's no evidence to support the claim. And, I just wanted to have a moment to talk about that because they were very clearly wrong. And they are these vessels that Americans look to provide us with sound information, that they go against the government, that they oftentimes question the government more than believe the government. And here they are portraying the exact opposite. So I wanted to at least have that segment because with this information it should be breaking news on every mainstream media platform, but it's not. It's only breaking in a lot of the foreign press is kind of saying, oh, wow, you had the which is huge news. You have the CIA director coming out and saying, hey, we have these covert biolabs that often she, in her statement, she made something very profound. She says that, you have very, very powerful people lying to the American people and withholding this information knowingly from them. So, that's any other time that would be huge news. So I just wanted to at least make a mention of.
It is. Yeah. And, Tulsi Gabbard, as the director of national intelligence, was above the CIA and all the other U.S. intelligence agencies. And she had a reputation for honesty, fair dealing. I was the first U.S. official ever to go to Syria and to disclose the truth about what was going on there. She was the first federal official as a very influential Democratic politician. That Tulsi Gabbard was being talked about very seriously in Democrat circles as being a future Speaker of the House or potentially presidential candidate for the Democratic ticket, and I think she would have been. She's very, very distinguished. She's very intelligent, and she is very unique among politicians. That she is very committed to the well-being of the United States, rather ahead of her own well-being. Mm-hmm. And I wrote a letter to every member of Congress about the truth about what was going on in Syria, and I got mixed responses back. But of all things, the way that I finally met Tulsi Gabbard is I got the letter. Here's this woman, congressman from Hawaii, a very liberal state of Hawaii, and she wrote back the most coherent letter exhibiting enormous insight into exactly what was going on in Syria. She understood from A to Z, as I did, what was happening. And I've written, thousands of letters over the years. This is the only time I have ever written a letter to anyone to commend them on their letter to me. And I wrote her twice. First was the first letter that went out, and the second one was to tell her how deeply impressed I was with her keen understanding of what was happening in Syria. And because we had organized an immense terror operation to overthrow the legitimate government of the country, through propaganda and so forth. And so she is the real deal. And when she speaks, you better listen to what she says, because she doesn't come at it with some agenda that is one way or the other. She's just a very honest, patriotic, decent American, and I think she's a great national asset to us.
Yeah. Well, we certainly covered a lot on the show, but I know that we went a little over time. And I want to thank you, Senator, for all your insight and giving us this discussion today. I'll leave you with closing remarks. So far we talked about the Iran peace deal, which still seems like it's on rocky grounds, and throws out the question of, the nuclear weapon, which is just kind of leaves us in this state where will we do it again? We talked about the integration between the U.S. military and the Israeli military, especially talking about the intelligence sector and the AI and tech. We spoke a little bit about what's going on with Tulsi Gabbard's new press release talking about the bioweapon labs. So I just want to leave you with, kind of giving us closing remarks, and then we'll continue on with the weekend.
I think that's a pretty good wrap up, Morgan. I pray for peace, and I feel at this point that for all the reasons we've talked about, that President Trump wants peace. I think he's determined to do the best that he can to bring it about, and we will see whether Israel is able to blow up the deal. It's very possible they will, but right now it's looking pretty good. It's looking like it's going to come about. So with any luck, when we have our show next week, we will be in a state of peace at some point.
It's going to come eventually, hopefully, one way or another, we could say. But thank you, Senator. And I want to encourage everybody to subscribe, and tune in next week to Focus on the News.
Thank you.